You know what would be interesting? Well, for myself, Fernando, also, is there a difference between what VOR you're using in regards to, like using my iPhone in the cardboard versus Oculus, right? Is it Oculus? If you can just talk about the difference in, how important is it to have Oculus Pro versus, anyway, is there a difference?
Yeah, there's differences. So part of me will say, oh, it's okay to use cardboard, it's okay to use Oculus Go. Part of me will say, yes, it's okay, but there's one problem. People that have actually big reliance in vision and they have already visual sensitivity, those are not the best ones because the interpupillary distance for them is not adjustable. So those goggles, they were made for young male adults because that's the people that play the video games. So young male adults. So there's research there showing that it was made for this. So younger people will not have the interpupillary distance correct. Females, that is not that correct to them. So there's a really interesting, I had to find this research again that shows the difference between men and women not changing the interpupillary distance, and they show that the women have more motion sickness. And then when they adjust the interpupillary distance, the number of people getting motion sickness was now comparable between men and women. And that's, for me, it's interesting, right? Because I never thought about that because I started using Oculus and when it was like SDK1, that it was like, it looked like a TV that you put in your face, right? Nowadays, they're beautiful. That's why I try to use the ones like Oculus Rift S or Quest. Other thing too is frame rate. So when they first created those goggles, some of those goggles were less than 60 hertz and made everyone sick. So they got to know that less than 60 hertz was not good, and more hertz the better. So Oculus Go, when using your phone, the frame rate is not high enough as Oculus Rift or Oculus Quest. And that frame rate is really important when we're creating that. Also, because those goggles, they have accelerometers inside. The better head-mounted display you have, the less delay you will have to the image that you're doing. And the biggest problem, and a big problem, is not only this conflict of sensory systems, is the wrong feedback of your input, of your system. That's worse than not having. So if you move your head with a head-mounted display and the image not move with, it's better than if you move your head and the image moves with a certain delay. That's way worse.
Dr. Fitzgerald, I just saw your post. I think that's great. Do you want to expand on that just a little bit? I can't hear you, but I can.
Okay, come in.
There you go.
Not yet.
What ends up happening with those oculars is that if you have a person, and women have a more narrow PD, and children have a more narrow PD, and like anything else, they pick one thing and they set that PD at a certain fix. So a PD of 60 to 62 is generally that male. Women are generally 56 to 58, and children can even be less. So the reason that they get that motion sickness is because those oculars are set up for you to hit the center of that lens at, say, 60 millimeters of that pupil diameter. And if you're 62 or if you're 58, you induce prism, that induces that motion sickness.
Yeah, exactly. And I never had thought about that until people start to do research, because So there are so many things that can cause motion sickness when you use goggles. That's one. The second one is the development. So if you have images, too much color, uh, too much noise in it, that makes also people get sick. There's still ways to go with head-mounted display, although they're being also well used in clinics, and there's a lot of people using. But my concern are safety first, and second, if they already make some people that don't have problems at all be dizzy, we should evaluate better when we're using with patients. You're muted.
Okay, now I'm back. So
Yeah.
I know there's been tons of research that shows how virtual reality improves skill or performance, but that's different if we're trying to promote neuroplasticity to something like we're having a problem with sensory reweighting. So it just seems like it has its place, but you would start maybe with a stronger foundation in mixed messages versus starting with mixed messages. I don't know. Deanne, I think wants to expand on that too.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is that the eye and the brain are very quick to see the mismatch. And the problem is, no matter how good technology is, it's still not as good as your brain and how it's processing that information. So if you're using it, you don't want to use that particular mechanism as a first line of therapy in this particular regard, because your eye, your brain, and your body will sense the mismatch, the difference. However, once you start to build that up, so as a secondary, tertiary, or even a fourth level care, then using virtual reality is awesome. First of all, it helps with keeping that person interested in what they're doing. And then that mismatch that you do on a level 3 or 4 is actually a training mechanism, but on a level 1 or 2, it creates a lot of distortion and a lot of not good things for that therapy.
Yeah. And that goes back to when we talk about concussion. And to me, we have to be really careful when we use with concussion patients. Not everyone. I go back to keep repeating that VR is a tool. It might not be for all patients, so we have to understand what patients can use. Also, you should try yourself. I have a lot of friends, their PTs like, oh, I want to use this with my patient. I was like, you try yourself first. You see how you feel first. Do you think that this is good enough for a patient? This will be good or this will be bad? And also, there's a learning period for the therapist. It's not like, okay, I want to use VR. I went there, I bought this goggle here, and I'm going to use with my patients tomorrow. There's no such thing. You have to actually go and train and understand, try yourself. You just don't buy and just go use. There are barely no equipments that you will do that, right? So that training part is really important too.